My dear friends, there is one lesson life teaches us again and again, sometimes gently, sometimes painfully. The way you see yourself determines the way the world sees you. Self-value is not arrogance. It is not ego. It is not thinking you are better than others. Self-value is understanding that you are worthy of respect, worthy of love, worthy of opportunities, simply because you exist. Many people are waiting for applause before they believe in themselves. They are waiting for validation before they take action. But let me teach you something powerful. Confidence does not come from applause. Applause comes from confidence. When you value yourself, your decisions change. You stop chasing people who ignore you. You stop accepting disrespect disguised as jokes. You stop shrinking your dreams to make others comfortable. And this is educational, not emotional. Because psychology teaches us something very clear. Human beings respond to standards. When you raise your internal standards, external treatment adjusts. You teach people how to treat you. If you tolerate constant criticism, people assume you accept it. If you allow boundaries to be crossed, others assume there are no consequences. But the moment you calmly say, "This is not acceptable," something shifts. Not because you became aggressive, but because you became aware. Pain is often the classroom where self-value is learned. Many of us only discover our worth after betrayal, failure, or loss. We discover strength in survival. We discover dignity in adversity. Your scars are not symbols of weakness. They are certificates of endurance. Circumstances can change your mobility, your income, your environment, but they cannot change your worth unless you allow them to. And this is crucial. Your identity must never be built on temporary situations. If your value depends on your job, what happens when you lose it? If your value depends on a relationship, what happens when it ends? If your value depends on appearance, what happens when time passes? True self-value is internal. It is stable. It is anchored in character. When you begin valuing yourself, your habits transform. You eat better because your body deserves care. You speak better because your mind deserves peace. You choose better because your future deserves protection. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks. You decide who enters. And let me teach you something powerful. Saying no is not rejection. It is self-preservation. When you value yourself, you no longer fear solitude, because you understand that being alone is different from being lonely. You would rather walk alone with dignity than walk crowded with disrespect. And something magical happens. Your energy changes, your posture changes, your voice changes, even your silence changes. People begin to notice, not because you demanded attention, but because you radiate certainty. When you stop begging for space and start owning your space, everything changes. Opportunities appear, not because the universe suddenly became generous, but because you became prepared. Relationships improve, not because people suddenly became kinder, but because you stopped accepting less. Life transforms, not because problems disappear, but because your perception evolves. Self-value is an educational principle of personal development. Internal beliefs shape external realities. So today, I invite you to ask yourself, what have I been tolerating that I should not? What dream have I postponed because I doubted myself? What version of me is waiting for permission to emerge? You do not need permission. You need awareness. When you value yourself, you stop surviving and start living. You stop reacting and start choosing. You stop doubting and start building. And everything changes, not overnight, not magically, but steadily, intentionally, powerfully. Because the moment you understand your worth, you stop negotiating it. And that, my friends, is where transformation truly begins. Listen carefully, because this is where everything begins. Self-value is not a luxury. It is not something you work on after you become successful. It is the foundation that makes success possible in the first place. If the foundation of a building is weak, it doesn't matter how beautiful the design is, it will collapse under pressure. And the same is true for your life. When you don't value yourself, you settle. You accept less than you deserve. You lower your standards to avoid losing people. You silence your opinions to avoid conflict. You hide your talents to avoid criticism. And slowly, without realizing it, you build a life that feels heavy, exhausting, unfulfilling. But when you value yourself, everything shifts. You stop asking, am I good enough? And you start asking, is this good enough for me? That single change in perspective transforms your decisions. It transforms your relationships. It transforms your career. Because self-value is the invisible force behind every choice you make. Understand this deeply. The world does not decide your worth. You do. The world only mirrors what you believe about yourself. If you walk into a room doubting your value, people will sense it. If you speak as if your words don't matter, people will treat them that way. But when you carry yourself with quiet certainty, not arrogance, not pride, just calm confidence, people respond differently. Why? Because confidence communicates credibility. You must stop tying your value to performance. You are not valuable only when you win. You are not valuable only when others approve. Your worth is not a trophy you earn. It is a truth you recognize. And let me tell you something powerful. When you finally understand your value, discipline becomes easier. You start protecting your time because you understand it is precious. You start protecting your energy because you understand it is limited. You start protecting your dreams because you understand they matter. Self-value is what gives you the courage to walk away from disrespect. It is what gives you the strength to try again after failure. It is what allows you to say, I deserve better, without guilt and without apology. You cannot build confidence on self-doubt. You cannot build success on self-rejection. You cannot build happiness on self-neglect. Everything you want in life, respect, growth, love, achievement, grows from one root. How you see yourself when no one is watching. So stop waiting for someone to validate you. Stop waiting for applause to feel important. Stand up internally. Decide that you matter. Decide that your dreams matter. Decide that your voice matters. Because the moment you truly value yourself, you stop living small. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for existing. And you begin to build your life on solid ground. Strong, steady, unshakable. And that is where real change starts to rise from within you, like a force that cannot be ignored. Let me tell you something that may feel uncomfortable, but it is absolutely transformative. You teach people how to treat you. Not with lectures, not with threats, not with long emotional explanations. You teach them with what you tolerate. Every time you stay silent when someone disrespects you, you are giving a lesson. Every time you accept being the last priority, you are giving a lesson. Every time you laugh at an insult just to keep the peace, you are giving a lesson. And the lesson says, this is acceptable. People don't always test your limits to hurt you. Sometimes they test them to understand them. Human behavior works like this. We observe reactions. If there are no consequences, we assume there are no boundaries. And if there are no boundaries, people will cross lines without even realizing it. You cannot expect respect if you don't demonstrate self-respect. Look at your posture when you speak. Look at your tone when you say no. Look at the way you respond when someone interrupts you. These small behaviors communicate your standards. If you speak with hesitation, people hesitate to take you seriously. If you constantly apologize for your opinions, people assume your opinions are optional. But when you speak calmly, clearly, firmly, without aggression, without drama, something powerful happens. The energy changes, the dynamic shifts, because certainty commands attention. Teaching people how to treat you does not mean becoming cold or defensive. It means becoming clear. Clarity is kindness to yourself. It is saying, I respect you, but I also respect myself. It is choosing not to argue, but also choosing not to accept mistreatment. And listen carefully. Boundaries are not punishments. They are protections. When you say, I'm not comfortable with that, you are not attacking anyone. you are defining your standards. When you walk away from constant negativity, you are not being dramatic. You are being selective with your energy. When you refuse to engage in gossip, manipulation, or emotional games, you are sending a powerful message. I value peace. The problem is that many people fear losing others if they set boundaries. But here is the truth. If setting healthy boundaries makes someone leave, their presence was conditional on your silence. You deserve relationships where respect is natural, not negotiated. And this applies everywhere, at work, at home, in friendships. If you always overextend yourself to prove your worth, people will expect it. If you always say yes, your no will sound shocking. But the day you start balancing generosity with self-respect, you redefine the dynamic. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to threaten to be respected. You need consistency. Consistent standards. Consistent reactions. Consistent self-respect. Because people adjust to the version of you that you present. If you present someone who tolerates everything, they will offer anything. But if you present someone who values themselves, protects their time, guards their dignity, and communicates clearly, the treatment changes. And when it changes, you will realize something powerful. Respect is not demanded. It is established through the standards you are brave enough to maintain every single day. Pain is not your enemy. I know it feels like it. I know when it hits, it shakes your confidence, your certainty, your sense of control. But pain is a teacher. A strict one. A loud one. Sometimes a cruel one. T is still a teacher, and the lesson it brings depends entirely on your response. You can let pain break you, or you can let it build you. Every human being will experience disappointment, betrayal, loss, rejection. It is not a question of if, it is a question of when. The difference between those who grow and those who collapse is not the absence of pain, it is the interpretation of it. When something painful happens, your mind immediately asks, why me? And that question traps you in victimhood. But the powerful question, the transformative question, is, what is this teaching me? Pain exposes weaknesses you did not know you had. It reveals attachments that were unhealthy. It shows you where you were depending too much on someone else, or on an outcome, or on approval. Pain shines a light on fragile foundations. And that exposure, as uncomfortable as it is, gives you the opportunity to reinforce them. Think about this. Muscles grow through resistance. Diamonds form under pressure. Character is shaped in adversity. Comfort does not create strength. Challenge does. When you face pain, you are standing at a crossroads. One road leads to bitterness. The other leads to growth. Bitterness says, I will never trust again. Growth says, I will trust wisely. Bitterness says, I failed, so I am a failure. Growth says, I failed, so I learned. The event may be the same, but the outcome is different. Do not deny your pain. Feel it. Process it. Acknowledge it. Strength is not pretending nothing hurts. Strength is saying, this hurts, but it will not define me. It tells you what you survived. It tells you what you endured. It tells you that you were stronger than the moment that tried to defeat you. And if you survived it once, you are capable of surviving again. Pain refines you if you allow. It too. It teaches resilience. It teaches discernment. It teaches emotional intelligence. After pain, you see red flags faster. You protect your energy better. You choose differently. And let me be very clear. Growth from pain is intentional. It does not happen automatically. If you repeat the same patterns without reflection, pain repeats itself. But if you pause and ask, what must I change? What must I strengthen? What must I release? Then pain becomes progress. You are not weak for having been hurt. You are human. But you become powerful when you refuse to remain broken. The experience that almost destroyed you can become the story that defines your strength. The rejection that crushed your confidence can redirect you towards something better aligned. The failure that embarrassed you can sharpen your preparation. Pain is temporary. The lessons can be permanent. And when you choose to extract wisdom instead of resentment, you turn suffering into strategy, wounds into wisdom, and setbacks into stepping stones that quietly, steadily elevate you into a stronger version of yourself than you ever imagined possible. Boundaries are not walls you build to push people away. They are lines you draw to protect what is sacred within you. And if you truly value yourself, you must understand this deeply. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. Many people confuse boundaries with selfishness. They think saying no makes them cold. They think protecting their time makes them rude. They think demanding respect makes them difficult. But let me tell you something powerful. The people who call you difficult are often the ones who benefited from you having no limits. When you have no boundaries, you slowly disappear. You overcommit. You over-explain. You overextend. You give and give and give until you are emotionally exhausted, mentally drained, physically tired. And then you wonder why you feel unappreciated. It is because you trained everyone to expect unlimited access to you. Unlimited access creates undervaluation. When something is always available, it is rarely respected. Boundaries teach others how to value your time, your energy, your presence. They say, I am generous, but I am not unlimited. They say, I care, but I will not sacrifice my peace. They say, I respect you, and I expect the same in return. And listen carefully. Boundaries do not require anger. They require clarity. You do not need to shout to say no. You do not need to argue to stand firm. You simply need consistency. When someone crosses a line, you address it calmly. When someone disrespects your time, you correct it. When someone makes you uncomfortable, you speak up, not with aggression, with certainty. Certainty is powerful. If you hesitate, people negotiate. If you apologize for your boundaries, people question them. But when you state them confidently, people adjust. And here is the truth that many fear. Setting boundaries may disappoint some people. Yes, it may make you uncomfortable at first. Yes, but temporary discomfort is far better than permanent resentment. Resentment grows where boundaries are absent. When you say yes, but mean no, you create internal conflict. When you stay silent to avoid confrontation, you create emotional pressure. When you tolerate behavior that hurts you, you damage your self-worth. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It is responsible. You cannot give your best to the world if you are constantly drained. You cannot love deeply if you are constantly disrespected. You cannot grow confidently if you are constantly shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable. Boundaries are the evidence that you understand your value. They show that you believe your time matters, your feelings matter, your mental health matters, and something incredible happens when you begin enforcing them. Your confidence grows, your stress decreases, your relationships either strengthen or fall away. And if they fall away, let them. Because relationships that require your silence to survive are not healthy relationships. A person who truly respects you will respect your limits. A person who truly values you will not be threatened by your standards. So stand firm, speak clearly. Protect your energy. You do not need to explain your boundaries to everyone. You need to honor them yourself. And when you do, you send a powerful message to the world that your dignity is not negotiable and your peace is not optional. Your identity is greater than your circumstances, and you must never forget that. Circumstances change. Situations shift. Seasons end. But who you are at your core, your character, your values, your principles, that is your true identity. And if you allow temporary situations to define you, you will live a life constantly shaken by events you cannot control. Maybe you lost a job. That is a circumstance. It is not your identity. Maybe a relationship ended. That is a circumstance. It is not your identity. Maybe you failed an exam, a project, a business. That is a circumstance. It is not your identity. But what do people do? They internalize the event. I lost my job, so I am a failure. My relationship ended, so I am unlovable. I failed once, so I am incapable. No, absolutely not. That is a dangerous confusion between what happened to you and who you are. You are not your worst moment. If you build your identity on external things, money, titles, applause, appearance, then the moment those things shift, your confidence collapses, and life guarantees change. Titles change. People change. Bodies change. Economies change. If your identity is attached to unstable things, you will feel unstable. Instead, anchor your identity in internal qualities: integrity, resilience, kindness, discipline, courage. These cannot be taken from you unless you surrender them. When you know who you are, circumstances lose their power to destroy you. They may shake you, yes. They may challenge you, yes. But they cannot erase you. Understand this deeply. Circumstances are chapters, not the entire book. And you are the author of how you respond to each. After. There are people who rise from the most difficult situations not because they were lucky, not because they had advantages, but because they refused to let the situation dictate their self-concept. They said, "This is happening, but this is not who I am." That distinction is powerful. When you separate identity from circumstance, you gain emotional strength. You stop reacting with panic. You start responding with strategy. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How will I grow from this?" Your value does not decrease because your situation becomes complicated. Your potential does not disappear because the path becomes difficult. A storm does not change the strength of a mountain. It only reveals it. So do not shrink your identity to fit your temporary reality. Expand your mindset beyond the current moment. See yourself not as the person stuck in a problem, but as the person developing through a challenge. Because one day, this difficult season will be a memory. And when you look back, what will matter is not the circumstance itself, but the strength of the identity you chose to maintain while going through it. Steady, grounded, unbroken, and defined not by what happened to you, but by who you decided to be in the middle of it. When you change internally, your world responds externally. And this is not magic. It is psychology. It is not superstition. It is alignment. The outer world reacts to the energy, the standards, the beliefs that you carry inside. If you are full of doubt, you hesitate. When you hesitate, you miss opportunities. When you miss opportunities, you confirm your doubt. Do you see the cycle? But when you strengthen yourself internally, your actions change. And when your actions change, your results change. Everything begins within. If you see yourself as small, you will play small. If you see yourself as incapable, you will avoid challenges. If you see yourself as unworthy, you will accept less. The world is constantly responding to your internal narrative. Not because the universe is listening to your words, but because your behavior follows your beliefs. Change your belief, and you change your behavior. Change your behavior, and you change your outcome. When you start valuing yourself, you walk differently, you speak differently, you decide differently. You stop chasing validation and start chasing growth. You stop begging for attention and start building competence. You stop reacting emotionally to every opinion and start responding with maturity. And people notice, not because you announced your transformation, not because you posted it, but because consistency is visible. Confidence is visible. Discipline is visible. When you improve internally, you begin attracting different conversations, different opportunities, different relationships. Why? Because you no longer tolerate what you used to tolerate. You no longer entertain what used to distract you. You no longer fear what used to intimidate you. Your internal change filters your external environment. If you upgrade your mindset, but keep the same negative habits, nothing shifts. But if your mindset truly evolves, your habits follow. You wake up earlier, you plan better, you communicate clearer, you choose healthier, and slowly, steadily, your results begin to reflect that growth. Do not expect the world to change while you remain the same. That is frustration. That is illusion. If you want respect, embody self-respect. If you want success, embody discipline. If you want peace, embody emotional control. You cannot control everything around you, but you can control your response. And that response shapes your reality. When you stop blaming others, you gain power. When you stop complaining, you gain focus. When you stop doubting, you gain momentum. Internal change is uncomfortable at first. It requires honesty. It requires responsibility. It requires letting go of excuses. But once you take ownership of your inner world, you realize something extraordinary. You are not as powerless as you once believed. Your thoughts influence your words influence your actions influence your results, and your results influence your life. So if you want your life to look different, start by thinking differently. Decide differently. Act differently. Not once, consistently. Because the moment your internal world aligns with strength, clarity, and self-value, the external world has no choice but to respond to the new standard you carry within you. And that response will gradually reshape your opportunities, your relationships, and your entire direction in ways that once felt impossible.